I hope you can hear us all right. I'm John Myers. I'm with the 362 Library. This is Ken Freestone from various different places. Where do you come from today? What do you?
Today, I am Master Composter Ken Freestone.
That's right.
That's one. We'll talk more about some of the other places I come from too.
So the Tool Library is a resource in one of the central neighborhoods on the east side of Holland. We are located on College, right between 18th and 19th, and we have in a shop that you can't see right now that we refer to as our front of house. We have a bunch of tools where the neighborhood can come and borrow them as needed. This right here is kind of our back of house where some repairs take place. But today we'd like to host the building of a compost bin, because we'd like to expand the resources that we have beyond just the tools that you can borrow to bring in some folks of knowledge and try to share that around as well. So Ken, can you give us a general overview of what we're going to be building?
Sure. Maddie, can you bring it over here?
Might be a moment while we
just adjust. Careful the tripod leg there, Maddie. That one. All right. So this is one of the compost bins that I've been building for years. I've been a master composter for about 20 years, and there's a certification through MSU Extension that talks about it, like the Master Naturalist or the Master Gardener, there's a Master Composter. So I went through that certification, and for years I've been teaching these classes, teaching people how to compost. This is residential backyard composting. This is not commercial composting. But I've been building these bins, and I've been improving them every year. And just to give you context, I get about 20 to 30 gallons of compost. I have an urban lot. I'm not way out in the country. 20 to 30 gallons of compost every month out of a bin this size. This is approximately a 3-foot cube. It's a little smaller than that, but it's approximately a 3-foot cube. Here's just generally what it looks like. We'll explain some of the parts and pieces as we go along and build it, but this is what it looks like. It's got a lid. It's got a little built-in prop. You don't have to have a built-in prop. This is what I do with mine. It's nice to be able to put materials in daily and close it up. The lid keeps it nice and tight. I don't ever worry about critters getting in here. It's also got some slits in there so that rain can get in there, enough moisture can get inside there. The lid also comes off. And we'll talk a little bit more about what all that is, how that all works. But I also made it really, really simple in the process. This is all hinged. So this box just moves very, very easily. You don't have to pick up a big box and move it all over.
Well, the importance of the hinge is to turn.
Right.
Compost needs to be rotated, turned, flipped.
Right. Yeah. It needs air, needs water, it needs heat, and with those three things, by having this bin, you can move the material over pretty easily. It's not too much. It's not too high. I always say to people, don't let it get too high, because like most of us, we'll put it off till maybe next month. If it gets too high, maybe next year we'll get to it. This way, it's a small amount. It's easy to handle. It's manageable. And it just works so well to be able to flip your pile back and forth on a regular basis. I do mine about once a month, maybe every 3 weeks in the summertime, but about once a month. And again, I get a lot of compost out of that. So this is the basic design. It really is a box with hinges on it. So if this design works for you, that's great. We will have materials available through 360, and also if you email us or let us know, we can send you copies of the plans too.
And us is?
So it would be, again, to me, Ken Freestone, or through 360. We'll do it both ways.
The reason there's two right now is because, Ken, you also have a deal through Ottawa County for dispersing these through the neighborhood.
Right. So we've got a couple of, I received a small grant from Ottawa County. I sit on the Ottawa Food, it's the Food Policy Council for our county, and it's about reducing, ending hunger in Ottawa County. And also I work on a committee that's the Hunger Committee and also Food Waste Reduction. So they gave me a small grant to help build a couple of these bins and disperse them into the neighborhoods. Here, there's some tools available. There's a pitchfork and a shovel available here at 360. One of the other bins that we place in the community will provide a pitchfork, we'll provide a screener, something for sifting out the material, and a shovel will go with it. Again, a small grant was given for that. So this, and I build these this is actually out of brand new cedar, but it's aged about 2 years. This was somebody was moving, and I bought this back from them. But if
This
you
is
look
what
at
the box will look like after being outside
Right.
for 2 years.
for 2 years,
Completely unattended.
why don't you grab one piece of the cedar just so we can see what a new piece looks like. So this is what this bin was built out of. Was built out of new material, and it aged and it holds up really well. It's cedar, so it can handle being outdoors. The other way I really like to build them is out of lumber, like you can even see it way in the back, a fence like this back here. That makes a great compost bin. One 8-foot section cut in pieces makes one complete bin. So it's really great. So tell your neighbor before you tear their fence down. But but if you can find old reclaimed lumber, that's the best way to do it. I also work a lot with recycling and repurposing, so that's my best way of doing it. But again, this is a real simple design, and we'll show you how that works.
So before we get started in the building, if you're interested in being a part of the Ottawa County program, contact Ken at.
So best way to reach me is my email is creativityken and the number 1, and we can post that later on too at Gmail. I can also be reached at the City of Holland. I'm the residential energy advisor for the City of Holland. I help with energy efficiency upgrades on homes, and that's k.freestone@cityofholland.com. So I'm pretty easy to find. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm in a whole bunch of places. So I'm pretty easy to find.
360 can be contacted at office@360 office at the number 3-60.org, or the tool library directly can be contacted at tools. I'm going to forget at 360tools.org.
Tools at 3-60.org.
If you heard that, that's what it is. And we're in this together, so if you can only remember one of them in contact, we'll help each other out and we'll get you the information for the other.
Yeah, if you can't find us for some reason, City of Holland. John and I also work with Habitat for Humanity. John also works with Home Corps, 360. So in some way or another, you will find us. So
You kick around enough, you'll hit us.
yeah, so come on into the garage.
This is probably the biggest tool that you'd need, and to be honest, I wouldn't even say you need it. It just makes it easier.
It's what I use at home, but it's so simple because I can cut a lot of lumber very quickly with something like a chop saw like this. And I've pre-measured a couple of the boards. We'll just cut a couple of them real quick. We won't spend a lot of time cutting boards.
So Ken already marked these, and what he mentioned is he made a couple of lines, but really after the first one, you've got a template. That you can then use to mark.
So you can then just set this on here, say that way every board is going to be the same size, mark it, cut it, or just put it right on the saw. Many times I'll just put it right on here,
Yeah.
hold it flush, drop the saw down, cut it, and they're all the same size. So that's just a real simple way of doing it. There's, as John said, there's 1,000 ways to do the right thing.
Right.
There's a few ways you can do the wrong thing too. Remember, measure 3 times, cut once. They say measure twice, cut once. I measure 3 times, cut once.
But if you don't have this, you can also do circular saw and
You can use a
anything.
handsaw. It would obviously be a lot of work because in a bin like this, you've got 16, you have about 25 boards this size total for the whole bin, for the lid and the sides. So that can be a lot of cuts. So again, using something like this is really much faster and much.
Which of course you can borrow from the tool library.
Exactly.
So we've got and all the tools you can see here. Ken brought a lot of his own, but all the tools that you see here, you can be able to borrow if you don't have them available at your house. Any other cuts that we want to do?
I think that's it for the cuts right now. So we're going to assemble one section of the bin. So that's the top half or bottom half, one section of the bin. We assembled one before the video. And so we're going to show you how to assemble one now. And again, these are just ways that I've found to do this at home. I do all of my assembly of all of my bins in my garage. So what we've got for parts and pieces here, when you saw the bin together, it had corner supports in it. Now you can get new lumber for this. Many times these are about the same size as deck spindles. So a lot of times you can find these at the Restore or Facebook Marketplace or wherever else you might look for used material. I buy a lot of scrap stuff and reuse it. So these are just corner supports that we're using. They're approximately 2x2s.
Which you can buy 2x2 furring strips at lumber yards free. You'd have to cut them to length, but you'd have them pre-shaped if you didn't want to recycle.
Right. So there's a number of ways to do it. I just like to reuse material, so this is a great way to do it. So what we're going to do is we've got boards all pre-cut for this. So again, we use the chop saw. We cut the boards to approximately 30 inches. Again, I have some bins that are up to 36 to 38 inches, depending on the yard and maybe if it might be a big property. And I've gone down to 24 inches. I haven't really tried to go smaller than that because I find 24 inches is about, it's really pretty comfortable to work with. And it's actually pretty effective. So what we're going to do right now is just set up just line up our boards first. And this can be pretty basic. You don't have to, we'll probably talk about the lumber too. So it can be rough side or smooth side out. It doesn't really matter. John and I were kind of thinking, well, what's better, smooth or rough, depending on where you're putting it. I built one of these for somebody who lives in a housing association, and they actually weren't supposed to have compost bins there. So we built it with a good side out, a really nice box, put it in their garden. Everybody thinks it's like a tool storage box, so they don't even really think of it as a compost bin. So it's but it made it look a little bit nicer for this neighborhood. They wanted something that looked a little better.
Well, and you raise a good point, because even in the city, if you have compost, one of the rules is it has to have sides.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of rules in compost, I don't believe, but
No,
that's one of them. It's got to be contained.
Right. So they actually say in the ordinance it says a manufactured bin. This is considered a manufactured bin. I'm actually when they refer to a master composter in the city of Holland, they actually refer to me because I work at the city and I'm a master composter. So when they have questions about it, they come to me. So it really is. This is a manufactured bin because it is closed. It has a lid on it, and I don't worry about any kind of critters getting inside there or any kind of odors. Good compost doesn't have many odors, by the way. So we're just lining this up, and longer.
Yeah.
So again, this is pretty.
And even though you saw me swipe that out, the reality is that it's a compost bin. If you err on the side of perfectionist, you might have to dial that back a bit and just allow yourself to build freely.
Yeah, this is a bin that's going to be outdoors, and you're probably going to be the only one who's going to see that. So I'm lining this up, and I'm trying to make this. If you really want to be a perfectionist, you can measure to say, okay, this is 3/8 inch here. This is approximately 3/8 inch there, so that's pretty well lined up. You are welcome to do that, or you can eyeball it. It is not going to matter that much. We are going to pre-drill these because, John, would you like to explain pre-drilling and why that's so important?
Yeah, in fact, I'll use this. So you can see the grain. Try to get, if you put a screw too close to the edge of the grain, it can split. So here we were testing different size drill bits. This is when we determined we needed a little bit bigger one. But just because of how the grain sits near the edge, you'll want to pre-drill.
And it also makes it much easier to put all the screws in if it's all pre-drilled. So I'm lining this up so these boards are all pretty even on this board, the support. And we did set up a little template earlier.
Yeah, but I think we watched it.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly, you don't need a T-square, you can use a regular ruler. I just like to use a T-square. I'm looking for the center point of my support. So of this piece right here, I'm looking for the center point, as close to the center as possible. I'm just going to pick, that is going to be approximately 1 inch on this board. And then from here, I want to make sure I'm not too close to the edge. And I'm going to put 2 in on each 2 marks on each of these boards to give a good support. I'm just lining it up with that 1 inch mark I made. And I'm just saying it's about, here's 1.5 inches, 2 3/4. I'm just trying to find a place that's not too close to the edge of the boards. And again, with that center point. So just a couple of quick marks here. And once you do this, then you can use the same little template. You can make a little template for it and just set it on the boards, and you'll know right where all the screws go. All right, so I'm going to just quickly pre-drill these.
What I did with that short.
We may have used that board.
No, I specifically. You want to make a template, and I'll screw it in.
Sure. Yep. So we make a little template. So I'm going to take a board and just quickly mark off where these holes are. So then when, on the next one, we can just set this down and mark where those go instead of measuring it out with the ruler. I'm just putting some marks in here.
You will see us build 1/2, like I just showed you, and then we're going to kind of mock it together so you can see it. The template becomes a lot more valuable when you have multiple ones to do. In other words, everything that you see us do today, to build a whole one, you got to do it twice. That's where templates come in really handy.
Right. And so remember, you've got 1, 2 times 4 times 2 again. So you got 16 times you have to do this. So it's easier if you make a template, that way you can just mark them out pretty quickly. So John, go ahead and.
I was going to say, well, can you see if we both work for both sides of the table?
Mhm.
So how about you mark
I'll
there?
mark
and I'll
these.
do these.
Let's get 2 in there first. That way I can hold it down. Yeah, that way it's not moving. So we're putting 2 screws in the end to hold it in place. So it's pretty much in its place now.
We have found that sometimes with the wonkiness of boards, you kind of have to negotiate and sometimes convince the lumber. But for the most part, we're going pretty well. Oh, and I just split. So even then, you got to be careful. Sometimes if you split, you can back it out just a little bit to take the pressure off the split, but for the most part, just kind of leave it as it is. The more you mess with it, the worse it'll get. It's true, if it splits, the best thing to do is just kind of leave it there and hope that the rest will hold it together. There is a PowerPoint of these plans that exist. It's not posted yet, but we're 360 is looking to talk about place to host it. Ken has these plans that he freely emails to anybody who asks. They're really well written. It's designed to be like a class.
Yeah, it is. It's based on my classes that I give. So, and that is, it's actually in a PDF version, so you don't have to worry about having PowerPoint. You can open it up pretty easily in a document format. Yep, split 2.
So, what's the easiest way to get started with compost, Ken? Because I'm looking at that bin and I'm trying to figure out how fast, how much do I need to get that started?
Well, the best news is to start compost, you really have everything you need in your yard and in your house already. So you have soil or dirt in your yard that you can put into the bin, and it really is a great starter for it. You don't have to say, I'm putting in banana peels and coffee grounds and then wait for it to become something. You can put some soil in there right away to get it started. After a month or so, then that soil starts becoming much richer because it'll have the worms and the food waste and everything in there. So
Just the soil, nothing else in there.
well, the soil, and then you start putting your food waste in.
Okay.
So you've got your banana peels, and I've got a very extensive list that I include in my Compost 101 class, which is another document that we'll share with you. It's everything from coffee grounds and banana peels and anything food waste you have in your kitchen. Leaves, this time of year, you can chip up leaves and throw them in there. Small sticks, don't put too many sticks in there. Grass clippings.
Why not?
Well, sticks won't break down. I mean, unless they're sawdust or they're really broken down small, they won't break down for a long time.
Okay. Is there any use for sticks anywhere in the compost bin ever?
Actually, I find that having a little bit of some sticks in there, and sometimes you might get some stones or something in it from your yard, is that it actually adds a little space there. So it aerates it a little bit by having a little space in it. If it's too compacted, it's hard for the worms and the microorganisms to get inside there. So that's why turning it is really important.
You're making a home for the bacteria.
Absolutely, absolutely. And everything you need for compost is in the ground already. Once you put that, the bin is open on the bottom. So anything we need for helping to process that is already in the ground. Worms, millipedes, centipedes, watermelon bugs or roly-polies or whatever you want to call them. There's a lot of different things that are in there already in the ground. And you'll be amazed at how much you can put in the compost. And places like, I know that most of the coffee shops will give you coffee grounds.
All right, found a knot.
Oh, found out the bit broke?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I have another box, a clear box there. So there should be another small bit. So you can go to most of the coffee shops and get coffee grounds. Some of them actually compost them themselves or have a composting service, but many of them will gladly give you a bag of coffee grounds. I use them all the time. One of the coffee shops I go to, I just grab a big bag of it, throw it in my compost bin. It's a great mixture. I don't add many grass clippings to it. You can add them, but I generally don't pick up my grass clippings anyway. You mow your lawn and you wait 2 days and your grass clippings are really great fertilizer for your lawn anyway. So I generally don't put them in there. Once in a while, when I feel I might need a little more carbon or a little more green, I might throw some grass clippings in. But generally I don't put them in there.
When you say a little more carbon, a little more green.
Okay, so there's greens and browns. You have carbons and nitrogen, and green things are going to be a lot of your food waste. So think of things that are really moist going into the compost bin. So grass clippings, and grass is one of those unique ones. When it's freshly cut, it's green. If you let it dry out, it becomes brown. It can be both. So think of the moist things as carbon, and the dry things, leaves, hay, straw, sawdust, those are all nitrogen. Those are going to be the brown. And here's the formula for it. About 2 to 3 bags of leaves to 1 bag of grass clippings is about the right mixture of browns and greens. Just to give you a general ratio.
2 to 3?
2 to 3 bags of leaves, of dried leaves, because you think about weight. So it's really how much would a grass clippings weigh? How many bags of leaves would it be? It's about that ratio for that. How's that coming, John?
Good.
Looking good.
I think I've got here. You want to finish?
Sure.
I've got 2 here, so it should stay.
All right. We have a lot of banter going on between us while we're George Miller, so you just can't hear it. So there's a lot. Was that an oh, like I lost my finger, or
No.
just
You would have heard more.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a different oh. Got it. Very speculative.
No, I didn't. If you were watching on the video, since I switched drill bits and got a slightly bigger hole, I got lazy and wasn't pushing down. And as I was telling Ken, actually Ken remembers Archimedes' screw. The history of the screw wasn't used as a fastener until many years after it was invented. It was invented as a way to bring up water. And so part of its natural tendency is to divide things, despite being used as a fastener now. So if you're not pushing down, a lot of times the wood will actually try. I wonder if I can hear it. Put your hand off. I wonder if we can show it. That one didn't show it. Sometimes when you're screwing in, it will actually lift up off of the wood. Because the screw is doing its job.
The knot right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one just didn't grab. But as you noticed before, we said this is outside. As long as we got most of it, one screw doesn't quite grab, you've got enough in the rest of the system to hold it together.
Right, and that's why using a couple of screws in each of these, if you wanted to, you could do 2 screws on the outside of each of these and 1 in the middle there, would probably be fine. You're just keeping the boards from shifting like that. All right, so here's one of the things I do at home, just for, because
first let's show them. So what we've done, these corner brackets are designed to be so we don't need to do what we did again. Now we just need to attach these 2 sides by putting slats. And so what Ken has developed is,
well, because many times I'm doing this by myself. So right now I've got John here. We could hold this up and the 2 of us could just hold it together. Here's what I do at home, is I just set a couple of tables apart from each other, and then I can put a board on here and figure out approximately where that table has to be. So we can just slide in, and that way I have an extra hand there to help me hold this up while I'm drilling these, or putting these in. And again, this one's probably a little bit off, so we'll do one side and then we'll move the table out. But as you can see, the boards are being held up now. I don't have to hold them. So what we're going to do here is, since we already have the same boards on the side as we're putting on the top, now we can pretty much line these up with each other, and they should be pretty close to being straight. So we're going to just start one right now, just to get it started, hold it in place, and then we can start putting all the other pieces around it. But if you put in 1 screw here, 1 screw here, this allows you to adjust this board, because the boards will swivel just a little bit if you've got 1 screw in there. Let's just go ahead and pre-drill these. And now we also don't need our template, because we can see where the support is right here. We know where this is going to go, and you have screws on the side, so I'm just lining it up with the screws that are already there to give me an approximate location for those.
I was going to say, I put that bigger video, you can't go.
Yeah, so we're just going to put in 1 screw now. That kind of locks that in place. If we do one on this side, same thing, pretty much line up that board.
Oh, and what I'm doing is I'm double checking, because I want to make sure that we've got enough space in the middle.
Yeah, and this is important if we've got new lumber here. So this is all going to be pretty close to the same size. When I'm using reclaimed lumber or old fences, boards might be, a little bit thinner. I might have grabbed 2 different sets of fences and try and put them together. So sometimes I'll cut it a little bit neater. Sometimes the box just looks a little funkier because it's old reclaimed lumber. So this is pretty much the same size. So I'm not too concerned about this one, but we will just put in a couple of screws. All right. So I'm moving the table back just a little bit. Again, this helps hold it up, but now we can line up these boards. Get 1 in here. John's about ready to say something.
I know.
I can hear the breath. He's ready. Just like, no, we do.
Okay, so notice though, because when I asked Ken about is there a place for sticks, he said aeration. Notice how with these, with these slats, we're putting them all together so there's no gaps.
Right. So there's no gaps on the sides. When we talk about the top piece, and I don't know if we'll have time to make the top, but I'll show you how it's made. And again, that's in the plans.
This is the short one.
Is that the short one?
Yep, I think we should take this one out.
Okay.
Somehow I think in our when we were chopping, we got one that was just
A little bit off.
well, it's exactly an inch.
Okay. Yep. This is the same size.
That's how you know.
Okay.
That's how you know. No one's ever off exactly an inch. You know, it's a very specific type of mistake.
And every board I have one that is off. Every bin has one board off. All right, try it again. All right.
There we go. So we don't need air gaps on the side.
Right.
You mentioned you don't get critters, but the process of composting creates heat. Aren't there even like mice who make their way in there in the wintertime?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So my winter composting. So we have this thing in Michigan called a freezer that goes on usually from December through about March. And many times my composting in the wintertime is I might have a garbage can outside my back door or near my back door, and I might put my food waste in there the whole winter long because it's going to freeze. And then in the springtime, I will slowly add it to my pile. You don't want to add all of that food waste at one time in the spring. It's really wet and sloppy. Your compost will be wet for a long time. So in wintertime, I just might keep my compost separately and start adding it in the springtime. I have
Now,
had,
do you do that for the purposes of compost or to keep out the mice?
no, I don't mind if mice get in there.
Okay.
I mean, I have had mice getting there in the winters when I haven't been able to compost. Last winter was so mild.
Sure.
I mean, I was able to put my compost in there all winter long, and I didn't worry about it. But in the winters past, where I've got 2 feet of snow on top of my bin, I'm just not going to brush it off and walk out there and put compost in it. So I've had some mice get inside there, but it doesn't really matter to me.
Okay.
You know,
But it's not a concern. I'm just thinking of overall critters because you mentioned good compost doesn't smell.
right.
Now,
So-
is that because of the way the compost is running, or is it because of the way it's being treated? In other words, are you not putting stuff in there that will smell purposely?
No, I'm putting everything in there. You might have some really smelly stuff that's been sitting in your kitchen, in your little container for a day or two, and it gets really smelly. We know that food waste is going to smell. I'll put that in there, mix it up with a little bit of soil, mix it with some soil, and you won't smell it at all. It just really, because the compost is so.
Even meat and cheeses?
Okay, so here's probably the 2 things not to put in there. Don't put meat, don't put cheese in there.
Okay.
Milk products or meat products. In commercial composting, they can do that. But in backyards, this does not get hot enough to break that down. In
Okay.
a commercial one, you can put meat in there. It is so hot, it burns it it processes it really, really well. Okay, so that's good. That's a good question. Thanks for mentioning that. But so the sides are closed and the lid is mostly closed. It's got some slits in there. So
Oh, now there, yeah.
So-
I didn't, yeah.
Yeah,
You've got
so-
slats at the top.
right. So I'll show you that in a moment. The reason is because I want the bin to really heat up. If I left it open on the sides, it was less heat being generated.
Oh.
This way, it's also keeping the materials in, and it's generating heat. And placement for the compost bin should be like a garden. It should get about 5 or 6 good hours of sunlight to heat it up.
Oh.
If it's cold, I had it in the back of my property at one point, and it was really shaded, and it just took forever. It will work, but it takes a lot longer.
It's a full time.
Right. So if you can heat it up, that's going to make it that much faster and that much better. All right, so let's get.
For some reason.
Well, here, let's just make sure these are all the same size.
Oh, that's true.
Let's make sure the board's all the same size. We're just double checking to see if the boards are the same size.
Yeah, I think it was just that one.
Just that one. And I had one that I had cut earlier that I had made a mistake. I didn't measure twice, and I cut it once, and You know,
I'm sure we'll find a place for it.
that happens. Yes, I will find a use for it.
All right, so, okay, do you want to start on one side first?
Yes, let's do a corner. Find out.
Okay, look through my questions. Oh, yeah, does compost catch fire?
I have never had compost catch fire. I've heard of some compost bins in a commercial setting not being processed enough or turned so that, yes, it can get really, really hot, and they have had some fires there. Never seen a backyard compost pile catching fire.
I think it was more like an urban legend I was thinking of,
Yes.
but I figured I might as well put it here.
Now, if you dump some materials in there,
Like gasoline.
well, yes, that'd be one. It's got like a meat and milk product. You're not put that in there. You're not put gasoline in there. Thank you, John. Yeah, yeah. If you want to heat it up really fast, don't listen to John. All right, let's go ahead and put one of these in, John. I'm going to hold this.
Okay. All right, so here's an example of where it's nice to have two hands. So sometimes lumber is true, and other times it has to be convinced. And when I say true, I mean straight. Sometimes lumber is straight.
Yeah, so that's a good one. We'll do the same thing on the other side here.
Yep. Yeah, I think I need to hold it this.
Okay, so now we have our box set, and we can put in the rest of the boards. They're pretty much in place. They're a little bit off. They're just
I was
again,
gonna say, yeah.
a little bit off, but the corners are pretty true.
You'll probably do much better if you're not joking around.
Right. You'd be concentrating.
Okay.
And you'd be contemplating your compost. It'll be great. It's actually one of my favorite things in my introduction, my biography, is that I get to tell people that I'm a master composter. And
I didn't know that existed, to be honest.
it does,
until I
yes,
saw-
yeah. And you know, sometimes people ask, well, so what do you compose? It's like, no, I'm not a master composer. I'm a master composter. That's like my cousin, the international magician, Steve Marshall. He's introduced himself. Hi, I'm Steve Marshall. I'm a magician. And they say, what instrument do you play?
No.
No. So it is something I demand in my biography when people introduce me. They make sure the last thing you say is that, oh yes, and he's a master composter. Because I watch the audience just look at me like,
So
really?
now, if you go, if somebody was getting interested in compost, I would pick his brain, and I feel kind of bad because I just end up asking him a lot of questions. Well, you need to know that master composters are like master gardeners. This is what you know. You want to talk about compost? This is your dude. You will always be happy to talk about compost.
and what else do I like to talk about lately, John?
Well, it's going to be ukulele.
Ukulele, yes. Now I have become a master composer and my ukulele. So yeah, I'm now living up to those expectations that other people have of me.
There you go.
It's not a goal that I had, 4 years ago, but now I do.
All right, so it's been about what, 20 minutes? We said about 20-minute broadcast?
40 minutes right
40
now.
minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So then roughly figure an hour and a half to 2 hours per box.
Right.
Because what you see here is now half. And then we built another half exactly the same.
And we got to turn it, I think, side together, yeah, like this. So that you want them to be lined up with the same length. So you'll notice the box is a little bit wider on one side than it is on the other because you put these boards on the outside of that. So even though these boards are 30 inches, so now this is 31 inches approximately. So what we would do now, and again, we probably won't go into all the details and you'll be able to see these in the plan, but let me show you what I put on here. So now I'm just going to take a 3-inch, it's called a strap hinge, and I'm going to measure 3 places for the hinges to go. So I'll pick one in the middle and 2 over here, approximately.
Let's
Again,
do the markings.
you want to do one?
Well,
Sure.
because I feel like we want to finish this box today.
Sure, let's
even
do
if
it.
we don't do it online. So at these, Ken's going to have 2 boxes. If you're interested in hosting somewhere in what's the available location?
Well, it could be, Ottawa County.
Okay.
So, we're doing it in Holland mainly because I live here, so it's easier for me to monitor it and help train the homeowner, but it really can be anywhere in Ottawa County. So I'm just going to pick a center spot. So again, this is approximately 32 inches, so 16. So there's our center point. And I'm going to pre-drill all of these. So I'm just going to mark all these first. So just putting a circle in, just put a whole circle right in there.
Oh, you like the big one?
Yep, that way you can. Also, you don't have to be as accurate. All right, so there's why I'm going to pre-drill these. So let's get, I've got a little bit bigger bit there, John.
Which screw do you like to use? Do you use the bolt?
Yeah, so let's bring those out too.
Okay.
And I think we're off camera here for a moment. Let's get back to camera.
So what we used on the first ones is just is a typical wood screw. This is what we use to put together the wooden components.
And now this one shows it as the Torx, the little star bit. It can be a Phillips, it can be the square bit. Any one of those are fine. I tend to like these a little bit better.
I do too.
By advice from my son, the woodworker and furniture builder, this is what they use in their shop. So this is what I use too.
Yeah, just a real simple deck screw. And what he's talking about is that Torx right there is the size or the shape as opposed to Phillips. And I agree with him. I like them. They hold well. Because it's a deck screw, it's designed to be exterior.
Right, exactly. So I'm just going to pre-drill these 6 holes here, and we'll just attach one of the hinges. If you want to show,
I've got it.
Okay, you got that right there.
So he's going with a slightly bigger drill bit because unlike the other screws, this one you can drill all the way through because this bolt, it's not the threads that are holding the pieces together like the wood screw. This one's going to have a little nut at the end so it'll clamp it down.
Because this is the part of the bin that's going to have motion to it. So you want to have some stability. The screws are fine for holding the basic box together, but when you've got a little bit of motion, that's why I'm putting 3 hinges on here instead of just 2. Again, it just stabilizes. Now, normally I would just do the same thing. I'd do all 6 of those, or just do all 3 of those, and there's 3 holes per. So what we're going to do is
just do half of one.
Yeah, so we're just putting the bolt through here, and it goes through about 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch.
We can lift up this whole thing. So he's already gone through the sizes, and you can see it just barely comes through. Screw it together. Is it coming out okay? All right. Trying to make it so it's easy for you to reach the other side.
Sure.
What do you need?
Usually, I mean, it can sit right up on here like this. I'm tall enough to do it. Now, John and I are tall enough to be able to do this from up here and reach in here, but you may need to put this lower or on the ground or something, whatever works for you. All I'm doing now is I'm holding the nut on the inside and putting the screws through here. So I'll just usually put all the bolts in.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Put them all in again, making this a little bit faster.
Hey, there's 2 different kinds of. Oh wait.
Oh, that might have been one that was left over from another.
That's the word.
Yeah, let's make them all.
Okay.
Come on, John, this is you. You can't have it.
You broke the perfection.
Wow.
Yeah, it didn't take much. Turns out.
So again, we're just gonna put the nuts on these.
In theory. practically can be harder to do.
Yeah, they don't go through very far.
Yeah, but so this is part of the parts list. You have a parts list, right?
Yeah, correct.
And so the nice thing is if you want to build your own, Ken's done a really nice job of putting together everything you'll need. The tool library is hoping by the spring to have bundles of tool kits available to make it really easy for you to grab all the tools at once.
So there it is. So that's how these are going to go. And we're going to put 2 more here. Again, I pick a nice comfortable spot here, about 6 inches in.
But
Yep.
and
So again, this will just allow this to easily turn. Although this lumber is pretty heavy, with those hinges on there, it moves so smoothly. Now let's show the lid.
I was going to say it's the only thing that we're not going to make it, I think, just for the interest of time.
Yeah.
But
So
to be honest, it's pretty much, it's a variation on a theme. So before, when we made those sides, we had our supports way out to the edges and all the boards together. But here, I assume you put them in the center just for strength?
right. So I put them in the center for strength. I put them about a ½ inch away or even an inch away from the edge. The reason is that when you pick the bin up, this makes a stop for it so the bin lid doesn't fall off. We used to have these on the outside and went, well, here's an improvement. So I put my supports here. When I lift up the lid and I use that little prop, it doesn't slide off the back. There have been times when I've actually put another board right here just to keep it from sliding off there. That's up to you. This is not something that's you're going to be doing a lot with. Now, here's 2 things. One is I attached a little bit of a prop to it. You can, originally I used to just put a stick in there. In one of my classes, somebody said, why don't you just attach a prop to it? Well, there we go, another improvement. So again, another one of those hinges right here. It could be any kind of a board. This is something completely different than this, just scrap that I use for the prop. Here's what I do for the spacing. Okay, now this is a very specific tool that you might even have these all over your house. So these are little shelf brackets. All they are just little shelf brackets. And I have different sizes of those. I use these as spacers. So if you've got something else that works well, I space these. When I put this together, I make little spacers like you would with a floor or something. Little spacers, and these are probably, yeah, they're pretty close, about the same size. And that way, there's enough room in here for moisture to get in there when it rains, but not too much. This seems to be the right amount for our climate, for our location, is this right here. So any kind of little spacer is fine, whether it's a large nail or, you know.
I was just gonna say, so the old carpenter's trick.
There you go.
When you're installing like deck boards,
Right.
but you can put a screw in between the boards as you're doing it. Right. You can see, but you have to pull it through, and then you screw it in, and then when you're done, you just take the screws out.
Right.
Anything that's a temporary spacer.
Yep. And
this
here's
where you want, right? Because you want
is about
some water, but not too much water.
yeah, this is about a ¼ inch on these. So, you know, that seems to work well. Again, it doesn't allow too much water, but it allows enough moisture to get in there. There have been some times when it hasn't rained, like this summer. It didn't rain for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. I did add a little bit of moisture to my compost bin. I just put just a little bit of water in there, just to, you know, just a bucket or, you know, whatever you want. Just put a little water in it, mix it up a little bit. It was just kind of dry. But,
and then that's it. There's no bottom.
Yep.
Because that's what separates this from other compost bins, like
Right.
the swirly ones
Right.
or
well, and
whatever, yeah.
So you mentioned like the ones that spin.
Yeah.
A lot of people have the rotating barrels. The difficulty with those, there's a couple difficulties. One is they get kind of heavy after a little while.
Sure, yeah.
So be careful with that. But they're also not on the ground. So the only microorganisms that get in there are what you put in the bin.
And
So-
that's the most important part, like
Right.
earlier, to make a house for the microorganisms.
There are
the
hundreds
key.
of them in there. Matter of fact, also if you look up, we'll put a link on there too. If you look up Ken Freestone Compost 2020, I've got 2 videos there that show the details of this, and they're very well produced, and they show the basics of composting. One is about 4.5 minutes, which is kind of my journey to getting here. Why did I think this is so important? The other one is about 8.5 minutes, but it shows you how to do the compost. My classes take an hour and a half. My video is about 8.5 minutes, and you'll get the basics of that right there. And again, with all the materials that we can share with you, it really is pretty easy to get started.
And even easier now, because so we're gonna end up closing up here, but we'll help you get one built. So now you got 2 that are completely built.
Right. Yep.
So if you're interested, you can get this dropped off. It's fairly low maintenance. I guess you got to figure to have a 6-foot space because you got to turn it. It's not just a cube. You got to have a
You're going back
space.
and forth, so you need about 6-foot space. Try and find some place that has some good sunlight in it. Mine is on the west side of my garage, but it's a brick garage, so it also gets about 5 or 6 hours of good sunlight, and the brick gets heated up there too. So it's a really nice location for it.
Didn't you help build 2 or 3 of them in the alleyway?
Yes, yeah.
So people could see.
Right.
Where is that?
Between 18th and 19th Street, River and Central Avenue, in the alley there, they did an incredible project of cleaning up the alley, replacing some fences, building some beautiful raised garden beds, and I built 2 compost bins with them, and then they built 2 more. So they have a shared composting throughout their neighborhood, shared gardens, and it looks beautiful. So that's a really good example for people to see what it looks like.
That was also they also utilized the city grant through 360 to help with that. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
If you're looking for work to do in your own neighborhood, 360 can help.
Yeah.
And come spring, we look to have maybe a couple more classes. We want to have some kits ready, so look for that. But I think, is there any final farewells? Anything we forgot?
Boy, composting is really simple. I was really afraid of gardening when I first started gardening, and I know that is for a lot of people. It's like, oh, how do I get started? How do I plant? What do I put in there? Composting feels the same way. It's not hard.
Yeah.
You have dirt and soil in your yard. You have food waste in your house. And just a really quick reminder that in the United States, about 35% of all the food that's produced, that's from farm field all the way to our house, is wasted. It is thrown in the landfill. That is the number 3 thing in the world. Is food waste is the number 3 thing in the world that's affecting climate change.
Wow.
So if you can compost at home,
You can change the world.
you can change the world. You are doing something to change the world.
And to be honest, now's a good time to do it. Because you said you can start with just dirt.
Yep.
We got a bunch of leaves falling, so you're going to have a bunch of the carbon.
Yeah.
Which means all you've got to do then is add the nitrogen from your fresh food.
Right.
Yeah.
Your coffee grounds, coffee filters, tea bags, all those things. So it's really easy. Again, there's a lot of great resources that we'll share with you, and watch my videos because again, they're just so well produced. My friend Dave Purnell did an awesome job of producing those. So they're fun to watch. I think they're fun to watch. And of course, they're very entertaining too.
Yeah, I think so. So
yeah.
go soil shelf. I think I muffled it.
Yeah.
But
That's right. We should have her t-shirt on. I soiled myself.
What was our
All
overall
right.
time?
Okay, on Facebook it was 53:07.
That's really close to what we intended.
Yeah,
We
it
were
was
shooting
great.
for an hour. How did it feel on your end? I think we did a pretty well job of.
Yeah,
Not
keeping some
having
things
too much-
moving.
Oh no,
Yes.
you guys did awesome. Yeah, I didn't feel like there was anything that it didn't feel dead at any point. There was some technical difficulty on the Instagram side of things because I think internet connection was funky, so it kept on
Sure.
starting and restarting. So we won't have it as one full video, but I think everything was fine on Facebook, and I'll end this on Zoom.